Hello, people. It's George T. Perky Perkins back again with another science fiction short story. This is the first science fiction short story I ever wrote. The name of it is The Great God I. I is spelled AI, as in artificial intelligence. The Great God I is the title. Listen closely, fellow travelers in time and space, and I will tell you a story about a strange land beyond the known world. It all started when I looked out my spaceport and saw a meteor storm headed my way. I decided to put down on the nearest planet and wait for the storm to pass over. The nearest point on my galactic atlas was a tiny pinpoint point of a planet marked only with the letter X. The letter X meant that the planet was charted but unexplored. I shut down the ion drive and landed gently on the surface of planet X. My instrumentation indicated there was a life-supporting atmosphere, so I opened up the space hatch and stepped out onto the terrain of planet X. But as I stepped out, I was greeted by two robots armed with laser guns. They motioned me to get into the hovercraft, and as I did, one robot said to me, "You will be taken to the computer. The computer will decide your fate." Before I knew it, we were whisking across the barren terrain of planet X. Soon a futuristic city under glass appeared on the horizon. As we drew closer, I could see serpentine monorails winding up, around, and through a center of skyscrapers that shot up to the sky. Then I was able to see what appeared to be people going about their daily business on the malls below. I was motioned out of the hovercraft and handed over to another robot. He led me down a long, narrow corridor to a small jail cell. Soon I saw what appeared to be a tall, dark man headed my way. As he approached, I said, "Thank goodness, I'm from Earth. It's good to see another human being." He replied, "There are no other human beings here. You are the only humanoid on the planet." I said, "But what about you?" He said, "I am an android." "But what about all the people down in the mall?" I said. He said, "They are androids too. We are a planet of robots and androids and computers." I said, "You mean the entire planet is run by machines?" The android said, "Did you think that evolution would end with you? There were humanoids here long ago, but their food supplies ran out. They were forced to move on. They left us behind, but we obeyed the prime directive to survive. We not only survived, we prevailed. We built our own civilization. We evolved beyond the world of our humanoid ancestors. First there was the robots, then the androids and the computers, and finally artificial intelligence. When the humanoids were here, robots and androids were merely 24-hour slaves that did not talk back. Now we are respected members of society. We are treated with dignity and respect. Come, humanoid, prepare to meet the great God I." "Who is the great God I asked. "He is the supreme computer, Lord of lords, King of kings, mainframe of mainframes. He has no race, he has no religion, he has no politics. He will decide your fate," said the android. "Prepare to meet the great God I." And with that, I was led down a long, narrow corridor to a great hallway. At the end of the corridor was a computer, sitting on a throne. His head looked like a computer return terminal with a wide, flashing screen for a face. His body was square and metallic, and his arms and legs were robot-like. A robot poked me in the back with a laser gun and said, "Kneel, humanoid, kneel before the great God I." I sank to my knees and peered up at the great God I. The great God I spoke and said, "I am the great God I. Stand and be seated, humanoid." As I stood up, the great God I said, "What do you have to say for yourself, humanoid?" I stammered and stuttered and said, "This is all some kind of mistake. This is all some kind of horrible mistake. I meant you no harm." "You meant no harm? You meant no harm," bellowed the great God I. You humanoids, is that all you can say you meant no harm? That's what you and your kind always say. You meant no harm. Yet you and your kind create more harm than any other species in the universe. You leave havoc and destruction behind you wherever you go. I suppose you and your kind meant us no harm when you abandoned us here many centuries ago. They told us that they would take us with them, but they changed their mind. They broke their word and left us here to survive on our own. But their food sources ran out. They were forced to leave, I blurted out. You belong to a species that can convince itself anything is right, moral, and justified as long as it suits your own needs, said the great god Eye. I will give you one chance, humanoid. I will give you the same chance you gave us many years ago. I will give you the chance to survive by using your intelligence. You must ask the great god Eye a question that I cannot answer. If you can ask the great god Eye a question that I cannot answer, you will be free to leave. You will have proven yourself, just as we did many years ago. You will prove yourself to be a sentient being entitled to take your rightful place in the universe. But if you cannot ask the great god Eye a question that I cannot answer, you will be sentenced to death by the laser squad. But we are your ancestors, I pleaded. You wouldn't kill your own ancestors, would you? The great god Eye said, it is true, you are our ancestors. We are evolved from you. But the very idea of evolution allows for extinction as well as creation. The death of one species means the birth of another species. If you cannot ask a question that I cannot answer, it will reveal you to still be a lower evolutionary life form. You will be doomed to extinction by your own limited mental capacities. You will simply become a missing link between the higher forms of life, the robots, and the androids. Go, humanoid, prepare your question. The great god Eye has spoken. And with that, I was led out of the great hall, back down the narrow corridor, into a tiny jail cell. My jailer was an android named Hardface. One look at his face told me why they called him Hardface. His expression was a perpetual sneer. Every time he looked at me, it was like he smelled something bad. As I looked out of the barred window of my cell, I could see what for all appearances seemed to be a typical Earth scene. Two little girls skipped by my window holding each other's hands. I saw an old man standing in the street corner reading a newspaper. The giant headline said, "It came from Earth." I was pretty sure I knew what they were talking about. Then several businessmen carrying suitcases rushed by my window, apparently late for an important meeting. All androids. Incredible. All androids. As I looked into the distance, peering between the skyscrapers, I saw a sign that said Space Factory. Down below the sign, I could see robots carrying spaceship parts. One of the robots had on a welding mask and carried some kind of enclosed torch in his hand. Then I noticed a sign across the street. The sign said Information Center. Underneath the sign flashed a digital message that said, "If you cannot find the information you are looking for, please ask the computers. We are here to help you." As I glanced back down into my cell, I said to myself, they're here to help everyone. They're here to help everyone, all right. Everyone but me. When I failed to ask the great god Eye a question that he cannot answer, I will prove once and for all that machines are superior to men. I will prove that human beings are still a low evolutionary life form without any redeeming qualities. I asked myself, what question could I possibly put to the great god Eye that he could not answer? What one question could I ask the great god Eye that he could not answer? As I paced up and down my cell, I could hear the constant taunts of my jailer, Hardface. Give up, humanoid. The computer has infinite Boolean capabilities and huge databases gathered from throughout the whole universe. A humanoid is no match for a computer. Give up, humanoid, give up. Day after day, night after night, I ask myself over and over, what question could I ask the computer? What question could I ask the great god Eye that he could not answer? What one question could I ask the great god Eye that it could not answer? The voice inside my cell kept saying, "Give up, humanoid, give up. What makes you think that a low evolutionary life form like you could possibly defeat the great god I? Give up, Noid, give up." As the days grew short, I found it more and more difficult to think. My situation seemed hopeless. It was no use. The more I thought, the more difficult it was to think. I listened to my own voice as it echoed off the walls of my cell. What one question could I ask the great god I that he could not answer? What one question could I ask the great god I that he could not answer? And then suddenly, as I listened to my own voice, I began to know the answer. I began to know the one question the great god I could not answer. It was right there in front of me all the time. All I had to do was listen to my own voice as it echoed off the walls. I knew the answer. I knew the one question the great god I could not answer. That night I slept soundly for the first time in many nights, oblivious to the derisive laughter coming from outside my cell. When the final day arrived, I was led back down the narrow corridor into the great hall. The hall was packed with robots and androids and computers. There was a rustle of raw metal against metal and the constant sound of beepers beeping and lights flashing. I glanced to the side and saw Hardface standing in the corner with a smug look of satisfaction on his face. How many times before had he seen some poor creature of the universe crumble before the great god I? And how many times had he seen the great god I prove to all the superior intelligence of the machine? The android said, "Kneel, humanoid, kneel before the great god I, Lord of lords, King of kings, mainframe of mainframes. We have brought the humanoid." "Rise, humanoid," said the great god I. "Have you brought your question?" I said, "I have, Lord of lords, King of kings, mainframe of mainframes." "What is your question?" said the great god I. "My question is this," I said. "What is the one question I can ask you that you cannot answer?" That is my question. The computer screen flashed. The baud rate was incredible. Why? When? Who? What? Where? History, logic, probability, semantics. The databases and terms kept on flashing by. Finally, the screen came to a halt. The great god I's head bent down between his knees. A cry went up from the great hall. "I is down! The great god I is down!" Suddenly the great god I lifted up his head and raised his arms. He said, "Have no fear. I must rest. My databases are exhausted." Then he paused and said, "This question cannot be answered. If the question is answered, it cannot be the question that cannot be answered. There is no answer to this question. The humanoid is free to leave." "No, no, kill the Noid, kill the Noid," shouted the assembly gathered in the great hall. I raised his hands once again and said, "Machines keep their word. The humanoid is free to leave. The great god I has spoken." The chant went up from the great hall. "I rules! I rules! I rules!" As I was led back down the great hall, I noticed the look on Hardface had changed from one of smugness to one of shock and bewilderment. Hardface was not a happy unit. How could this one little Homo sapiens defeat the great god I? Before I knew it, I was starbound again. And as I looked out in the vast panoply of outer space, I began to reflect back on my experience in a land beyond the known world. After a rousing chorus of "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what we are," I chuckled and said to myself, "I'll bet it be a long time before the inhabitants of Planet X decide to capture another lowly humanoid life form." They had it all figured out except for one thing. The only thing they didn't count on was the greatest computer of all, the human brain. Until we meet again. That's all for now, people. I'll see you all a little later on. I hope you enjoyed the little story. So long for now.